Hi, thanks for joining me on another episode of Why Not Go, the channel dedicated to rock and roll, especially punk and the Sex Pistols. I'm Maggie, and I appreciate everyone watching and commenting. As I've said before, I love the comments. I love the dialogue. Well, I'm envious of the lucky people in England that get to see the Sex Pistols with Frank Carter later on in the month. Those should be some great shows. Well, this is a different video. A lot of people have said they like my personal stories, and this is one of them. In the mid 80s, I used to do some music reviews for some local magazines in LA. I graduated from college and then with a degree in English, and I loved music, and I worked for a public relations firm who represented some music clients. It was a very small firm, and the biggest client was Yngwie Malmsteen, and at the time I didn't even know who Yngwie Malmsteen was. I just thought, oh, who's that guy from? I thought he was from like the early 70s, and his music just wasn't my thing. I thought, oh my God, did punk rock never happen? Like, why is this guy doing that kind of music? But anyway, I did some music reviews as well, just part-time in the mid 80s. And it's funny, a recent viewer once said to me, punk rock was not just, it wasn't just the music, it was the whole attitude that really changed things in music and in people's personal lives as well. And that was the same for me. I think after the Sex Pistols in particular, and punk rock, here I go getting emotional. I think that I too had a different attitude about music, and I found that I didn't tolerate things that I used to just sort of accept. You don't realize that you don't really like something until you think, why did I ever tolerate that? And one of them was drum solos. I mean, when I grew up in the early 70s, whenever you saw a band, it was like, oh God, there was always a drum solo, whether it was a big band or a small band. And if you're not a drummer, like, I don't know, why do you want to watch a drum solo? And the other thing that I thought to back then too, after punk rock, was I don't tolerate just over the top guitar solos like Yngwie Malmsteen and a lot of others. I just thought I can't deal with that anymore. And I'm the same way today. I can't stand long over the top guitar solos. And another thing that I found that I didn't tolerate after punk rock was bands that weren't authentic. And that gets to the subject of this video. With punk, bands were authentic, the good ones. They believed in the music. They weren't just jumping on a bandwagon because it was the current trend. And I wrote this review in particular that upset a lot of famous people, including comedian Joan Rivers. I wrote a bad review about a band because I thought they were just that, sort of bandwagon jumpers. I felt like they wanted to just be like the Go-Go's, but I felt like that really wasn't their musical preference. And when a band's authentic, you just feel it. And it's not that I don't like commercial music, or I liked it, especially at the time. I liked the Go-Go's, and they were commercial, and I liked Blondie. I love Blondie, and they were obviously very commercial, but they were authentic. So I reviewed a band, and it was a small review in a magazine called Music Connection. and I'll show it here. And it was, I never really read it very much myself, but you know, sometimes they would have a star on the cover, and sometimes they would have a cover. I'll show a couple covers here, and sometimes they would show, you know, have an article about a record company executive or a recording studio. There's a cover here that I'm showing that's informing people how to write songs or how to get songs published. So it was kind of a music industry magazine. And in the 80s, there was a lot of music industry in LA, big record companies, a lot of money being thrown around. Record companies like Geffen Records and I don't know, IRS, MCA, RCA. There just seemed like there was a ton of record companies. Steve Jones talks about it in his book Lonely Boy. When he came to LA in the 80s, he said that Andy Taylor got him some session work, and then from then he got on his feet, because believe it or not, Steve Jones looked like he was couch surfing at the time. He couldn't even afford a place to live, let alone a car. And he said that Andy Taylor got him some session work, and he says it in his book. There was a lot of money being thrown around in the 80s at different bands. I'm glad some money was thrown Steve Jones' way. And so it was a different time than now. It was a lot of record companies in LA. And so I was writing for this magazine, Music Connection. And as I said, it was a magazine that I think was mainly read. Maybe some musicians read it, but I think it was mainly read by record company people. It was sort of like an industry magazine, and it had a small section in the back, which I didn't think many people even looked at, but I guess they did. And I wrote some reviews for the live section every once in a while. And this one caused a big stir. A lot of people were very angry at my review, and including Joan Rivers. And so for my English viewers, and for maybe people that are watching outside of the United States and don't know who Joan Rivers is, I'll show a short clip here of Joan Rivers from the 80s.
Teach you to applaud when you were a child? What is this?
Nobody ever told me anything. A little, yes,
There's a little footstool coming out for you.
I'm exhausted.
They didn't see the back of the cover here.
Oh, yes.
Give a shot of the back of the cover here.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? It's from my piano.
Must look closely at the royal family and look over here. Okay. I didn't know. I heard it. Really close?
Oh, she was at my house. I'm so glad
she was on
left.
the trip?
Oh, I had 2 weeks with her at the house. You know, friendship is friendship, but where are you going to take the Queen of England? You go to Burger Queen, you go to San Francisco. You go to Burger King, you go to Crown Books, and you're set.
That's
she was in a lousy mood. Did you meet her?
No, I didn't go to the, I was invited to go to
I know, she told me.
But I didn't go.
She was very upset because it rained the whole time, and she had brought, a trunk full of bikinis, and it was...
she gets them at the House of Dowdy out here, over there.
Who does her clothes? The Queen of England should dress up better. Come on.
Yeah.
It's like Helen Keller designed her clothes. Do you remember that?
Well, my hat is a little...
She saw in my house, I had put a doily under kitty litter. She said, oh, I'll wear that today. And I took her shopping.
Were you?
Well,
now, where would you take the Queen shopping?
Well, yeah, I took her up and down Rodeo Drive, because who else is going to go with you but a friend, you know?
All right, of course.
But she has no class. I mean, no taste. We went to a shoe store. She put her foot in the measure. She said, I'll take it. She wears soap on a rope for jewelry.
Not a snappy dresser, eh?
Earrings still on the cardboard. I mean, the woman is... And the sad thing was, Nancy came for lunch. I was going to ask you if it was all girls. Yeah. And Nancy Reagan and the Queen, and Nancy looks fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she does. No, I'm sorry. Like her or not, Nancy Reagan's got a lot of class. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, the woman has class. She picked her nose with a breadstick. I was so...
certain upbringing, I guess you learned, yeah. I kept seeing the designer, Hardy Amy's, is that his name? One of them who's supposed to design the clothes. Very British, you know. Saying that the Queen makes the final selection.
Oh, that she shouldn't be allowed to. I mean, you could be good at being a queen. There's certain people. See, no one would tell the Queen things. She sits like this, John. Have you ever seen legs crossed at the ankles and these short dresses? I mean, you know, and no one has the guts to say to her, Your Highness. That's why the guy broke into her bedroom. He wanted to say, Your Highness, hit the sentence.
Was Joan Rivers on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. That was in the 80s. And she was a very trailblazing comedian. She started in the early 60s. And back then, I think maybe there was just Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers as far as doing stand-up. There was comedians such as Lucille Ball and Carol Burnett, but Joan Rivers was a stand-up comic, which was very. She was a trailblazer, especially in the early '60s when she started, and so that was a clip where she was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and she ended up having her own late night show in at the time that I did my review of this band. And that was in November of 1986. She had her own show opposite Johnny Carson at night, and he stopped talking to her because he felt like that was a betrayal. But she was a huge star. She had her own talk show, and then later on in the 90s, I think she had a daytime talk show, and she had a very caustic sense of humor. I liked her sense of humor. And but she was a huge star, and I'm sure a powerful person in Hollywood. And so at the time, she was born in 1933. So at the time I wrote my rock review of a band, it was an all-female band called Red Shoes. And as I said, I think what really set me off was I just didn't feel like they were authentic. I felt like they were just looking for a record contract, and I didn't think that their musical influences were what they were projecting. I felt like they were kind of like they had progressive rock influences, but they were trying to be kind of bouncy and new wave because that was sort of the trend at the time. So what did Joan Rivers have to do with this band? She would have been 53 at the time, so I wouldn't think that she was a huge star, Joan Rivers. I don't know why she would care about some small review in a magazine written by me. But she did. But first I'll read my review of the band, and I'll show it here. So they were called Red Shoes. They played the Roxy in West Hollywood. And the Roxy, if you don't know LA, that's almost in Beverly Hills. So I did see bands there, but usually the more in my opinion, the sort of the cooler bands, the better bands, the more authentic bands were further east. Like they would play the Whiskey and then other clubs in Central Hollywood. But they played there on a I think it was a Saturday night, November 1986, and I was assigned to go review them. I was given a press kit. And it wasn't a band that I had ever heard of. I don't think anyone had ever heard of. So this was my review, and it had to be split up. It's just a small review. It had to be split up in sections. That was the format of the magazine. And I remember at the PR firm where I worked, the person I worked with, he's the one that got me into reviewing bands from Music Connection, because I think he edited the live music section. And I used to tell him, his name was Bruce, and I used to say, Bruce, I hate the way we have to split it up into sections: material, musicianship, performance. And he used to make fun of me. He used to say, Maggie said, not everybody thinks the Sex Pistols are the best band in the world. Some people care about musicianship. Of course, that would really tick me off. Yeah, that's a whole other subject. But believe it or not, a lot of people in the 80s they thought punk rock was just sort of like a flash in the pan, at least in America. I knew a lot of people that didn't really respect punk rock. They just thought it was, they just didn't respect it. I think it actually took a couple generations. I think after Nirvana and the bands that came out in the 90s, I think that finally made people realize that punk rock wasn't just something that was a couple years in the 70s. So this is my review of the band. Material, that was the first section. Obviously written to try to capture some kind of rock and roll hit. Their material includes a ballad, a reggae number, and even a full-blown rocker, I Want You. Red Shoes are a band who should be playing other people's songs. Even that might be too much for them. Not trying to write their own or what their management thinks they should be writing. So I was really kind of ticked off at the fact that I guess they had a powerful management company. I'll get into that in a minute. Musicianship, not even a little bit of technical skill could save this performance, but as luck would have it, none was provided. And then I say, I won't read every word. Singer Mary Harris seems to be determined to play keyboards every time she sings. Maybe if she tried one at a time, she could master one of these skills. So I was really brutal. Again, I'm coming from a different kind of perspective. I just felt like they were not genuine. Whether I would write a review this harsh today, I don't know. But I was angry. I just felt like they were jumping on a bandwagon to try to get a record deal. The only people in the audience who seemed to be really getting into this debacle, I call it, were the middle-aged men in the back wearing Red Shoes t-shirts. They couldn't have been part of the management, could they? So I thought they were the management company. Red Shoes should play at, this is the summary, at a Glendale Top 40 bar, if at all, not at the Roxy on a Saturday night. The culprit here is their management company called DMR, whose clients include Joan Rivers and Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong. That's what I read in their press kit, but they debated me on that later. Someone there seems to have come up with the revolutionary idea that female groups are hot, and has dressed these women in lace, leather, and all kinds of neat new wave items. This was the kind of show where one has to leave the second the lights come on. The next step is to turn the car radio up as loud as you can bear it in order to cleanse the senses. Funny stuff, this record. Funny stuff, this music business. And I went by my full name of Margaret back then. And then there's a caption there, a picture of them there. I did not write the caption. It says Red Shoes hopping in a car and headed for some Glendale Top 40 bars. So that was a brutal review. As I said, I was probably just the wrong person to write a review on it for a band like this. I felt like they just had a sound that I felt wasn't genuine. I felt like it was sort of like progressive rock. The keyboard kind of sounded like the keyboard in the Van Halen song Jump. They just weren't for me. So, but I was brutal, and I feel bad actually that I was this brutal, especially because they were women, because I used to play keyboards in a goth band in the 80s, and I loved it every time I saw a woman in a band, and I loved all female bands. I actually promoted them for Music Connection magazine. I wrote an article about a band called the Super Heroines. They were an all-female goth band that I really liked, and the singer was married to the singer from Christian Death. And I wrote an article about the Pandoras. That was another female band that I really liked. So I wasn't anti-female at all. I always liked it when I saw women in bands, but this band I didn't like. So, and I was brutal, I guess. I was brutal. So that was the connection that I thought they had to Joan Rivers, because I read that in the press kit. They debate that when they wrote letters. So Joan Rivers, I still have the original letter. She wrote a letter about me, and I got all kinds of letters. So it was it was a big deal. And I remember when I went into the Music Connection offices after the review came out. I think I went in there to pick up a check, and I didn't even do this for money really, because I think I got paid. It was something like $15 a review, which maybe would be worth $30 or $40 today, but it wasn't paying my rent. I did it for fun, and a lot of it was to sort of promote bands that I really liked. But I remember walking into the Music Connection office the first time after the review came out, and the editor, the first thing he said to me, he says, "Wow," he said, "you've really caused a commotion." And I said, "I did?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then he said, "A lot of people want me to fire you." And I still remember like it was yesterday. I was drinking a Coke, and I literally like spit out what was in my mouth. I just said, "Oh my God." And I said, "For what?" And he says, "Oh, for that review." He said, you've really ruffled some feathers." And I said, "Oh," and then I sort of regretted. I said, "Oh my God, maybe I've been too harsh." And he says, "Oh," he says, "well, I need to talk to you." And so I did think I was going to get fired, but I wasn't really upset, because if that was the money that I needed to pay my rent, I would have been upset, but it was just sort of extra money. But he pulled me into his office, and he said that you've upset a lot of people. He said, including Joan Rivers. And I said, "Did she phone you up?" Because I couldn't figure out, like, why would Joan Rivers, she was like one of the top entertainers in the country. Why would she be phoning up a small magazine to talk about a tiny review in the back about a band? And he said, "No," he said, "Joan Rivers did not, I just want to make that clear." He said that she did not directly phone the magazine, and she didn't say that she wanted me fired, but several people did, including the management of the band, who I thought was the same manager, but I think they did do some work for Joan Rivers. Maybe they were her publicist. There was definitely had to have been a connection, because I read it in the press release, but he said that the band's management wanted me fired. So Joan, I still have the original letter, and I'll put it here in the video. And this is the letter that Joan Rivers wrote in November 12th, 1986. And she says, and the red marks on it is the red marks that the editor put in, because I think he printed this letter in a following publication, and then he's got his editing marks here. But this is the original letter, and it says, "Dear," it was "Dear Sir" originally. "I was both amazed and puzzled to read Margaret Arana's review of Red Shoes, as she seems to be describing a show that never took place. I happened to have been in the audience that night." I didn't see her, but I don't know, I wasn't looking at everybody. "As I am a great fan of the musical group Red Shoes. They were not wearing, as she describes, lace, leather, and all kinds of neat new wave items. Could it be that Miss Arana never attended the show?" So the management company said that I didn't attend the show. But I did. I was there. And I feel, then I was never attended the show. Then I feel her attack on Red Shoes was vicious, bitchy, and totally uncalled for. Has someone in the group done her wrong? I am one of a fast-growing group of Red Shoes fans. I saw them 2 years ago at a little club in Malibu, and since then have followed them constantly, watching them grow both as performers and musicians. I have no connection with the group outside of the fact that I think they are super. And then she signed it. So I still have the original letter. I'm kind of glad about that. It's good not to throw things out sometimes. So the management company called my editor, that's what he said, and they wanted to fire me because they said that the review was over the top, and that they said I wasn't at the show, and it was kind of put me in a funny situation because my editor said, well, were you at the show? So he actually thought that maybe I wasn't at the show. And I said, no, I said, I was there. I said, they can check their guest list. My name was crossed off. And I said, and I described people in the audience, men wearing red shoes, t-shirts, and I described what they were wearing. They said I didn't describe it accurately, though. So I think he knew that I was an honest person, and he said to me, he said, okay, he says, I believe that you were there. He says, but they don't. And he says, I can't have people thinking that my reviewers don't go out and actually go to the shows. So I think he believed that I was there, but he was, he didn't want the reputation of the magazine to be hurt by my review. So he didn't fire me, but I will say that I think that the Joan Rivers letter and the other people, and I'll get to that in a bit, I think it did hurt me writing for the magazine, because I don't think I ever got another assignment after that. In fact, I'm sure of that. I think I continued to review bands, but it was bands that I said, hey, I think this band deserves, attention. Or it was interviewing people that they knew that I would like, or interview, not review. Like I remember interviewing the lead singer of Echo and the Bunnymen and people like that they knew that I would like. But they never sent me out again to review a show blind when I didn't know the music. So I guess it did hurt me, but I guess they probably thought I was kind of a loose cannon after that review. But as I said, I don't know, it's rightly or wrongly. I don't know if I would be as harsh today, but as I said, it was kind of just from my punk rock roots, and when I can tell or when I feel a band is not authentic, and also I didn't think their songs were good, so I'll say that too. But when I really feel like a band is not authentic and they're just kind of jumping on a bandwagon, that just sets me off. and I was set off with this. So I'll play a short clip here and of the band Red Shoes, and the only live performance I could find, because I think the band was short-lived, was on the Joan Rivers show. So as I said, I think she had more of a connection with them than she's would let on. But maybe she was just a fan. I don't know. But the only live performance I could find was when they were on the Joan Rivers show. So I'll show a clip here so you can see for yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Red Shoes. countdown.
All right, so that was the band Red Shoes. The singer is Mary Harris, and I'll get to her in a little bit. It's all just kind of interesting, I think. But that was them. Like I said, I don't know if I would be as harsh now, but I was. So that's just, I don't know. That's the way it goes. Maybe I wasn't professional. I kind of second guess myself now. But they were, as I said, I did not think that they were authentic, and I felt like they were a progressive rock band that was trying to sound like the Go-Go's. So this is a letter that the management sent, where I won't read the whole thing, but they say the review is a total farce. Her description of what they played and what they wore is totally inaccurate. We question her attendance. Yeah, that's where they really got my manager, my editor, worried, because they questioned my attendance, and but I was there. I don't know. And then she didn't even review the press kit we sent her. She couldn't even do that right. Much to our disappointment, ladies and gentlemen, we do not manage Joan Rivers and Cheech Marin. I didn't make that up. It was in the press kit that they did manage Joan Rivers, but maybe I could have misread it. Maybe that they did work for her. I could have misread it. Maybe they did publicity for her and didn't technically manage her. I don't know, but the press kit talked about them working with Joan Rivers and Cheech Marin. And they ended to say, we are very proud to manage Red Shoes. And this is another letter that came in. There was a lot of letters. It was like a lot of people saying they weren't going to renew their subscription to Music Connection magazine. This is a letter from the band Ambrosia, and the person here is Burleigh Drummond. Now, Ambrosia were a band that started in 1970, and they had hits, and I guess then they were progressive rock and kind of, I think, what they call yacht rock today, that kind of like middle of the road stuff. And they had a hit called Biggest Part of Me, How Much I Feel, You're the Only Woman. I think I remember these songs. So the drummer of Ambrosia wrote a letter, and I still have it, and I'll put it here, and this is the original letter. He says, I have been recently, a group that I have been producing was reviewed by Margaret Arana in your live act review section. He was married, he doesn't say it here and I didn't know it, but he was actually married to the singer and the keyboard player. They got married in 1983, I know that now. So he didn't reveal that here, but so that's a connection there. His wife was in the band. And then he goes on to say it's negligent and amazingly negligent as any form of slander. It's not even within reason. In my opinion, the only one it degrades is you. So he wrote an angry letter. So he was the drummer in Ambrosia, as I said, and he was married to the singer in the band. And now that singer, Mary Harris, actually plays with Ambrosia. And after Red Shoes, I hope they didn't stop because of my review, but I guess they didn't last long. And she went on to perform with many years for the Margaritaville guy, who's Jimmy Buffett. She was in Jimmy Buffett's band for a long time, and then and now she's in Ambrosia with her husband. Another person here says Margaret Ranamak. This one also questions my attendance. Myself, along with Joan Rivers and other celebrities, are aware of your absenteeism. So that's, as I said, they were questioning whether I was there. If you were there, you would witness the SRO crowd. I think SRO was a recording studio, and the repeated encores. I believe Music Connection could concentrate on methods to create a tighter artistic community instead of degrading and discouraging the local bands. Yeah, that person was angry. And then this person, all right, so I'll read just one more letter. This one is from a man named Ron Zwang, and I believe he worked for Joan Rivers, because when I looked up the name, it's Zwang, a person with the same name got they started their career writing, helping her write her monologues. So that's kind of a coincidence. So I think this is someone who worked for her. I just read the supposed review of Red Shoes by your alleged critic, Margaret Arana. I was at that Roxy show. Where the hell was Margaret? It was a fantastic show. The crowd loved it. Red Shoes playing and singing were professional. It's a shame they weren't reviewed by a professional critic. Yeah, I don't know. My writing wasn't that good, but whatever. Margaret might have been able to gauge the crowd's response if she didn't have her head so far up her ass. How about sending Margaret to something she's capable of reviewing, like a McDonald's opening? So, yeah, I really got a lot of people really angry. I think that magazine, I don't think they ever really, I don't know, I don't think anybody was really brutal like I was. I think that whenever I read reviews in the magazine, they were always kind of tepid, not too positive, not too negative. But I guess I was severely negative on them. The band wrote me a letter as well, but I won't put it up there because it's very hard to read. It's a bad Xerox copy. But they question, they also question whether I was there. And then they say that luckily Margie, they call me Margie, Michael DeBars, Andy Taylor, and Morris Day don't share your opinion concerning Mary Harris's ability to play keyboards and sing at the same time. Yeah, and Andy Taylor, which I'm assuming it's the same Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, I don't know. I think that it sounds like she was a session player. I got the feeling, even though I said that they couldn't really play, I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't session players. They came across as that way. So I got lots of angry letters, lots of people saying that and I still have them. There's like quite a few here. And then more over here. But I'm glad I saved them, especially the Joan Rivers one. And I think that, as I said, I think that what really bothered me about this band, and a lot of bands, they weren't the only ones, I just happened to be reviewing this one, what bothered me the most was that I didn't feel like they were authentic. I felt like they were, their musical roots really weren't what they were trying to portray on stage, being this kind of bouncy new wave group. I felt like they were just hopping on a bandwagon to try to get a record deal. And as I said, I like commercial bands. I liked a lot of commercial bands back in the 80s. But the ones I liked, I think, were authentic. So that was what happened to me in the 80s. I continued to write music reviews for Music Connection, but as I said, I don't remember them sending me out on any more assignments. I think they were worried that the same thing might happen again. So I think that after that, I was just sent out for bands that I had suggested, so they knew that I would give a positive review. And years later, in 2009, I was in the LaGuardia Airport in New York City in the JetBlue terminal in the bookstore, and who was next to me, 2 feet away from me, looking at magazines at the same time I was Joan River. She's a very tiny woman. And I thought of this episode, but I didn't go up to her. I never went up to celebrities. I respect their privacy. But I'm still curious why she was such a big proponent of this band, and why she wanted to, why she was so upset. But I didn't go up to her. I was kind of surprised she was in the JetBlue terminal. I thought, wow, she's like, must be a multimillionaire, because JetBlue was kind of a discount airline. Sadly, she passed away in 2014. I believe she was 81. And she it was kind of controversial because it was sort of a simple procedure, and she went into cardiac arrest. So I'm sad about that. But anyway, that's my story. I had a kind of a punk rock feistiness to me when I was a record reviewer, a live band reviewer rather, and I caused a stir. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Just one of my personal stories from back in the 80s. Thanks as always for watching. I'll be seeing you.